Good morning. It is 10:05 a.m. This is the first budget work session for Smithfield Township. My name is Jacob Pride. I'm chair of the Board of Supervisors. Members present include Vice Chair Levenheim, Supervisor Barrett, our office manager Julia, Treasurer Frank Cefali, Sharon. I do not remember your last name. I know Holly Corcoran, and I don't think we've met yet. Leslie Pinto from Holly Corcoran's office. So Julia prepared for us these really great packets so we can fully see everything on the budget, which is great, and I know these are balanced proposals. So I think the general fund, there's 36 pages, so I think maybe our best bet is to start off with the highway fund, which traditionally doesn't see a lot of movement given the obligations. That's 13. The large one next to you.
Yeah, but
the bigger one.
Starts with 13. You said it's.
Well, yeah, 13 and 36. They're taped together, but there's.
Oh.
And there were pages that I cut out.
Yeah.
So there's only actually 20, but it's still large.
All right.
Okay. So I think we should probably get started with the highway fund. Julia, do you want to talk about what went into crafting the balanced proposal?
Sure. So what you see in front of you, this is actually not technically balanced because we do have we're not spending as much money as we're slated to bring in. That's our plus. But one of the things that I tried to do this year is because last year we were looking at line items and going, what is this? Why are we doing this? You'll see notes on the notes column that explain some of the things. For example, the state road maintenance is what we get for the winter agreement adjustment. And what that is our road crew plows two state roads, Hollow and Cherry Valley between two spots, so PennDOT reimburses us for that. As far as everything else, back a few prior meetings ago, the board approved the new F600 truck for the road crew. So you'll see a partial payment in major equipment. Per liquid fuels rules, we are not allowed to exceed $53,000 in that category based on how much liquid fuels we're getting. So you'll see it partially here and partially in the general fund. Besides that, as we go through this, while it does look like we have oodles of extra money, we have not gotten Ed's proposed road paving schedule yet. So that $74,000 in 439.001 is just a guess of what we'll be using. And we also have not gotten the estimate to fix the pipe under Kings Pond Road yet. So Those are two things that we're still in the mood for, or we're still waiting. But besides that, everything is general run-of-the-mill, salt and cinders, traffic signal expenses, et cetera.
Which pipe are we fixing?
The one under Kings Pond Road between Great Buck and I believe it's Great Oak. There's a lake on one side that narrows into a stream and then goes under the road. Partially because it's old, partially because of the massive amount of water we've received over the past 2 months. There was a portion of it that caved in, so they did an emergency repair to fix the road. But it is something that we will need to take action for next year. And John Tressler's office is already taking a look at it to get us an estimate of what it's going to cost.
Well, that's good, because that will probably eat up the vast majority of the proposed surplus. Because I know that most of that surplus anyway, like, even if you accept, the guesses, saying what they're going to be, the surplus is only because of a slight error on our part last year, which led to rolling over 100 and something thousand from the liquid fuel fund, correct?
That's correct. There was a $190,000 project that we did not pay out correctly, so we ended up having to pay that money out of the general fund, which left that highway fund money here for us. One other thing to add, the township did commit a $150,000 match to the Green Mountain project. Because neither of those grants have been awarded yet, obviously we submitted one, Sorry?
No.
Oh, yeah, but we haven't received any award notification on that yet. So this might also be a nice buffer if we do in fact get that project. But, that's the general overview then. Shall we start a line-by-line review?
And I guess, when we're looking at this and what we're going into in this particular time of year and into winter, everything's going up. I guess we all know that. And I guess this has been factored in too, Julia, as we go along, because, the price of fuel, number one, and that's gonna, it's gonna affect everybody.
$3.60 a gallon.
$3.60, yeah.
Well, that's gas, I mean,
Yeah.
diesel is more.
Well, all of our diesel expenses are in the general fund, so we'll pick that up at a later time. In general, I think they roughly go up, but we can definitely go line by line.
Okay.
As you see on this sheet, you've got what we spent in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and a 2021 annualization, understanding that we don't have expenses between October 6th and December 31st of this year yet. So for anybody who's listening, how we calculate about what we're going to spend is we check last year's 2020 budget between those dates, figure out how much we spent there, and then add it to what we've already currently spent this year to get a rough estimate of where we're looking to end up at the end of 2021. So then for the first line item, interest income, we budgeted $1,000 last year. We are down at approximately $800 right now, and we're guessing that we're gonna be somewhere around $900 for this. I'm hoping to see the interest rates turn around a little bit, which is why I've kept it at $1,000. Is that good?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Eventually the markets are gonna have to turn around. I mean, they're doing very well right now, despite circumstances. It's just the interest rate.
Okay, 354.030, as the note says, is the winter agreement adjustment. We just received exact numbers on that, I think yesterday. I don't believe it made it into this, but this is very close. And the liquid fuels tax, 355.020, as well as the turnback, 355.030, are both PennDOT mandated, so we're good to go with those. I actually had a question for our wonderful Corcoran's office over there. Yesterday, Lynn and I were looking into 355.050, the state liquid fuels income. And according to the chart of account, that number is supposed to be dedicated to general municipal pension system state aid. We couldn't figure out for the life of us what state liquid fuels income is, and we were wondering if you had any idea before we made the account inactive and shifted it over. There were charges back in 2017 and 2018 credited to the account. I think it's a duplication. I think that's the same thing. But I don't know, we'd have to look back and, Okay. That would be great, because if we can get rid of another duplicative account, it would clean up our chart of accounts even more. That being said, board, that's why it's a 0.
Well, that makes a lot of sense if it's duplicative, don't necessarily, need it.
As far as the next 3, miscellaneous revenues, transfer from the general fund and refund of prior year's expenditures, we're all at 0 because we don't need to currently transfer anything from the general fund. We're not planning on getting any miscellaneous revenues, and we're not looking for any prior year expenditures at this time. As far as the fund balance forward, 399.0, this 167,000 number is an estimate. What I did, the account currently has $220,000 in it, and last year, October through December, we spent approximately $53,000. So I just took that $53,000 off what's currently sitting in there to give us a rough estimate of what we're gonna have left in the account at the end of the year. We can do that. As Brian mentioned, not that this would be used for fuel, but in general, prices are going up.
Yeah.
And this fund balance forward will be used for electricity and traffic signal repair, and other road maintenance issues. So if you wanted to, we can decrease this a little bit, assuming we're gonna spend more money this year, if we want to.
I have a question, because in the past, what we've done is, seen if we had funds available to be able to allocate more as a balancing item, and all of the income and revenue has already been recognized for the, that it's a reserve, but in my mind, that would be more of a balance sheet item. Do we need it, in other words, we're already over, so I think we would just look at what the current year is, and we might be able to take that out for now.
We can definitely do that. We might need to understand that that exists once we get the King Pond's road estimate and everything in. But if we want, we can take that out and make that zero, so you understand what we're working on.
Yeah, so what's actually gonna be coming in, and then it's out that, we're over budget on the expenses, we know we have a reserve that we can.
That works for the board?
Yeah. Fine, from my perspective.
Okay, moving forward, vehicle operating expenses and penalty late fees, both at zero, either 430.270 and 430.317. We've had less than $10 in charges in both of these accounts over the last 4 years. So we're hoping they can stay at zero, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Major equipment, I believe I mentioned this earlier, but according to liquid fuels tax rules, we cannot exceed 20% of our liquid fuels allocation to pay for major equipment, which is why this is at $53,000 number, and this is a partial payment of the new truck. Of that money in general fund when we get there.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Of 9 rule.
Yeah, that's a good question, Doug. I believe there's a PennDOT program for, municipalities along I-80, or maybe I-80 and I-78, where, if we buy new equipment, especially if it's, operated by, I think, natural gas or other fuels, alternate fuels, a substantial amount of money that you can get towards those.
I'm unfamiliar with a program that would do that. I do know that there's a grant around for offering money to municipalities based on the Marcellus shale tax, but I'm unfamiliar with that program. That is something that I can look into and report back to the board with.
This was just for if you happen to be along one of the major corridors like I-80.
And you said it was for alternative fuel vehicles?
I think it is, but it's for purchase of vehicles.
I know of a similar program that affects, electric vehicles. Obviously, I know that this is not, but I think that be it Marcellus sale or the Volkswagen settlement, there's definitely some sort of, not necessarily a grant, but it might be more like a rebate program or something like that. Yeah.
It wasn't just for electric. I think it was any kind of alternate fuel, but that sounds worth looking into. It sounds delicious, actually.
I don't think fuel sounds delicious, Robert.
The idea of getting something from the Volkswagen settlement, I think is great.
Yeah, well.
For lying about what their car's combustion was about.
Yeah.
Many years. The guy owned one.
Okay, moving on, next is order 32.001, salt and cinders. I did place $52,000 in here, budgeted 48 last year, and our annualization currently is at 84, with the understanding that last year we spent 50. Do we want to raise this because of prices going up?
It's 52 now,
Yeah,
And-
it's 52 now.
and it was, actual, 2021 57, was it?
2020, we spent 50,000. 2019, we spent 66. 2018, we spent 42,000. 2017, we spent $42,000.
That's a miracle considering the two blizzards those years.
This 2021 was almost 85,000, so.
Yeah,
I mean, it depends on how hard the winter's gonna be, if we have a quick fall.
Maybe consider, like, the average spend is about 57, so maybe something like 60 as a working figure would make sense. I don't wanna guess too much, but I feel like, I don't know. I feel like the reports of, oh, we might have a bad winter are like very anecdotal and they don't always bear out, but I feel like, you know,
It's a lot in a
inflation
year.
and we've got,
And, last year was also when it was probably the craziest, forecast ever.
true.
we were hit repeatedly with a lot of snow in the beginning of 2021.
And it was snow that came and then you had to spend money, to do your roads and everything else.
Right.
And then it would, 4 days later, you'd get another one.
Yeah, that was rough.
We got into a relatively calm.
Yeah. Yes.
Knock on wood, mild. We need a mild winter this year.
Yeah.
But, so Jacob, you said 57,000?
Yeah, somewhere in like 57 to 60 range.
You said 60, my
But
apologies.
whatever everyone feels is most reasonable. Yeah.
Everything's
going up.
Cool.
Yeah, 57,
I say 60.
60,
Great.
we'll make that.
Okay, traffic signals and electric expense, 433.370. I have this at 3,300. Electricity has gone up a little bit. From the board?
Yeah.
That number,
And we have a contract
Yeah.
too, so that's a fixed item.
3,300 seems pretty reasonable based on,
Yeah.
like, the average spend there, particularly over the heavier years. Like, I certainly wouldn't expect an outlier where it's, for some reason, 2018 was like $2,048.
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay. Great, moving on, traffic signal repairs. This is down at 200, even though our average spend is quite a bit higher. If you look through the years preceding, we used this line item very heavily for 1 year, and then it decreased.
Right.
This is a line item that I've also handled in our general fund, which is where you'll see that one
Right,
there.
and that's where we'll bear the brunt of it, right?
Yes.
Because I know this year we had to do some pretty major repairs on one of them.
Yeah, I do.
I think the lights just totally, the internals fried.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the pole was struck by lightning during one of our many storms this year.
Yeah.
And we needed to replace it.
And insurance too is
Yes.
a factor there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we have that company who is excellent, that does our maintenance and everything else, and so that's a good price.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, it sounds good. All right.
Okay, moving on, streetlights, 434.361.
Let's count the streetlights. All right. Down there at the Gap, what do we have, about 5?
It's not many. I don't know the exact number, but it is not many.
Yeah.
Right.
And up here at the
Are
turnaround.
all our streetlights LED now?
I'm unfamiliar with what kind of bulbs they have.
I think by next year they're all supposed to be. I think Ed was
We're
talking about
transitioning them.
how they're
Yeah.
pretty much all going to be there the next year or two, because I think most of them were getting replaced. I know PennDOT or someone had loaned us some lights before we got, got struck by lightning fixed.
I'll reach out to Ed and find out the answer to that question, Robert. Moving on to repairs of tools and machinery, 437.374. 374. This is at 50,000 because I believe, I don't remember what the 160 was for. Oh, yeah, reading the wrong line item, thank you. 29,000,
20 and 21 anomaly?
Could have been.
Yeah, we had a couple of bigger repairs that were needed, and I think one of the reasons is the truck that we were repairing continuously that now we're replacing for next year, which
that
earlier
might
cost.
still be a little bit low anyway. And actually, perhaps we should talk about this, we'll have to talk about this later, but there are other asks that Ed has made for equipment that, depending on what you want to do, we can put it in highway fund. But part of the repairs from last year was a snowplow that he's been building and doing everything he can to hold on to it as long as possible. It is finally given way, and so one of the things that you'll see in the general fund, or can be part of the 53,000 here, is a new snowplow for one of our big trucks. That'll come in at 7,000. We'll discuss that in the general fund. But regardless of that, it might not be a bad idea to raise this. Looking at this, I don't know what I was thinking when I put in 29.
Well, again, we've been upgrading our equipment
7,000.
Yeah.
over the last several years. And I think we're gonna see maybe the 29's a bit low, but there is at least a tendency for us to spend less on repair as we replace.
Absolutely.
So.
What happened back in 2020 that we went up to 59,000?
2020?
Sharon, would you be so kind as to, check that out for 374, 2020?
Otherwise, it seems pretty consistent, so.
2020, is that the accident, we had two major accidents. One of them when one of the big trucks went off the road and down an embankment.
It's a lot.
I think we, I remember that. I know that we need to replace it.
We had, it was body shop work, it was engine work,
There's a lot of miscellaneous stuff, like 5,000 was truck repairs, so it might be down. 1,000 and 1,000, but everything else, around 1,000 or less. A lot of repairs, so.
a lot of repairs.
We got 60 MC. I don't know if it was a purchase amount, but that was 7,000. No, that's PNS garage.
That's being
That would have been for the
Repair.
Blazer,
I
see, or is
No.
that a Ford?
No, that was one of the bigger trucks.
I
Yeah.
think that's when, I'm a little unfamiliar with cars here, so I apologize, but I think the axle on the GMC.
Oh, yeah.
And so they had to get it towed and get
Yeah,
the axle.
I remember
because
that, right.
The GMC parts are very hard to find. The part was extremely expensive, which is why I'd want to replace that truck.
Right. Probably also had some costs when someone hit one of our trucks. Not too long ago either.
Yeah. Then understanding that a lot of those expenses were smaller with a few larger purchases, would the board like to keep this as it is or raise the 29,000?
I suggest raising it since the last 2 years has been.
Maybe like 35.
Years.
About the average spend and what we budgeted this year. How does everyone feel about 35? Yeah.
35.
Yeah.
Go
Okay.
35?
Yep, we'll shift that to 35. Moving on to the next line item, this one waffles quite largely.
Right.
And I believe this is so high, Sharon, if you could back me up on this. But after we had the slight kerfuffle with the bid, we had a lot of extra money left over in the highway fund. So where our general fund normally covers, other road maintenance costs, we threw everything into the highway fund because we had the money there.
Yeah.
Ollie is nodding yes, so that is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So that is why that is so high, for 2021. But if you look past that, at the 2019 is also high. I cannot explain that. But the line item does bounce a lot, which is why I put it at 55. What are your thoughts on that? Excuse me, 50.
50.
Well, that's kind of, this is just like, patching, it's not the actual paving, correct? Because that would be 439.001.
I believe it depends on what.
Or is that just the larger bid project? Sorry, that's the bid project, then this is in-house, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe, past experiences is the 439.001 is where we put anything that goes out to bid, and road maintenance, where our guys do it themselves.
Are you aware of any, major maintenance projects coming up?
Yes, the Kings Pond Road will be our major maintenance project for the upcoming year.
And that's in the highway project, right?
Yeah, that's rough, well, the 74,000 that's there is just kind of a useless number, but it's just sitting there at this point. The Kings Pond Road quandary showed up sometime, I think, late last week. We're still waiting on numbers so we can put that in the budget. We don't know if that's gonna cost us 50,000 or 100,000 or 200,000 at this time.
Okay, so that'll be that line item now, but other, road maintenance, I mean, I know those are
We have
always
the,
being patched.
we patch and everything else, and even even when we passed mid-October, where the, PennDOT won't, back up any paving that you do because of weather supposedly. We do it cold patch, and, we spend a lot of money on it because that's when your roads get wrecked. And that's when a lot of the complaints come in, so you go up and you do the best you can. It's temporary. But.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 50,000 makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that's something that when we sit with our roadmaster too, the good news is this is something we work together to see what's the priority, what roads we really have to do, what we wanna do, how we feel, so.
Yeah, and
It's negotiable.
Absolutely, and once Ed gets us the numbers, the cost to do all of the road maintenance, this will absolutely update.
Yeah, that's a good point. So 50, as Jacob said, I think is.
It'll change.
Yeah.
If he gives it to us tomorrow, we'll change it at the next meeting.
Yeah, we got a couple more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, moving on, diesel fuel highway, it is in here, as you see, we only pay, fuel out of our general fund, so that's why this is at zero. It will remain at zero.
Do we even want it on here as a line item?
Yeah, things that are zero that we're not planning to do again,
Yeah,
can we just delete them?
absolutely make this inactive.
I'm not, aware, what is the advantage of paying the diesel through the general? Is it required to be paid through the general, or is that
That's a good point.
I would need to look into the liquid fuel tax to find that answer. Lynn and I spoke about this yesterday, and she said when the bills came in, she was told point blank, never pay fuel out of, liquid fuel, which is why we don't. But I haven't had time to look back and just find if that's a statute or if that was, a preceding board decision that has just stuck and become law for us.
Can I say?
It might have been that you had limited resources, so you didn't want to pay the diesel. I'm just curious, because now we're in a situation where we can but I don't know whether it makes sense.
A real quick background on it, that was a former roadmaster,
Oh, okay.
protecting his turf. And it wasn't, let's just say it was oral command.
Local.
Local.
Understood,
Got
okay.
it. And,
We might wanna pocket that and see whether it makes sense, on whether we should
Yeah.
be paying it out. It's allowed.
Yeah, absolutely.
well, I'm sure it's allowed. I'm sure it is. So we can look into that and make sure, double check that, yeah.
Yep.
And then, that's a good point, then maybe it shouldn't be in the general fund, maybe it should be highway fund.
Might just be one of those percentage things too, to where we, maybe do it in both and, for a certain part of the year, it can come from here, certain part of general fund.
The other question I had was regarding the, now that we're talking about this, the percentage of, capital that's allowed to be paid, and it's only out of the current expenditure, is the current liquid fuel income?
That's a
Or
good
are
point.
you able to draw on any surplus from prior years?
That's a good point, the carryover.
Just to make sure I'm in the right spot, you're talking about the major
I'm
equipment
going back up
purchases,
to major 437.41.
I believe the way liquid fuels is, it tells you 20% of your current allocation.
Okay.
And my understanding of that rule is whatever is up in, 355.020, that's what we need to abide by.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
that
if
is
it stays current, then that's clear. I was just wondering if you're allowed to use.
That's a, yeah,
Yeah,
the
I don't know,
carryover.
that'll be another thing that I research after I do the fuel question.
Yeah, it's always good to have the best information.
Basically, Kings Pond now is just a question mark.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did put that 74,000 in there, and I believe the reason that that's in there, I honestly couldn't tell you why I picked that number. But it's just in there to be a spaceholder at this time. As soon as we get the answers from Ed, that number will be updated. Excuse me, our engineer, so that's John Trussler, we're waiting on that number for.
Right.
Sense.
Are we okay to continue moving on?
Yeah.
So bridge maintenance repair, last year we had scheduled $123,000 for this. This was a partial for the Green Mountain Bridge.
Right.
When we were potentially having to look at repair it on our own dime before we applied for any grants.
Right.
We did put $2,000 into this account back in 2018, which is why there's $500 in here. But that being said, maybe it's best to bring this back down to zero with the understanding that repairs would come out of, I guess this is bridge maintenance now. But we haven't used it, so there's 500 in there. I don't know what the board thinks about that.
Wasn't there a bridge last year that was supposed to?
So that was the Green Mountain Bridge, and we were looking at potentially repairing that year. Since then, we've applied for grants. Our engineer took a look at it and said that it'll be okay. So we're waiting to see if we have any grant money to bolster that. To repair the bridge back to full capacity, it's $502,000, something in that range. And with both the DCED multimodal and the PennDOT multimodal grant that we applied for, both require a 30% match of $150,000. So we're waiting to see when and if we get either of those grants to help offset those funds.
And let me say too, that $500,000 was really nothing official.
That's correct.
That was
if we
just,
don't receive the full amount, John Trussler thinks he'll be able to repair the bridge.
300.
300 at the most.
Yeah.
And hopefully those, both multimodal grants, or at least one of them will kick in.
That would be wonderful.
When will you use it?
Generally speaking, the DCED multimodal is announced, I believe, sometime in December of 2021. As far as the PennDOT multimodal, or it's not due until November 5th, so I believe we're expecting award, sometime in the summer of 2022.
On the second one.
Yes, yeah.
Hopefully it's
For the one that, Missy brought to our attention, that you guys will, actually be signing resolutions for and a brand new commitment letter, at your next regular meeting.
So if you get the multi-mobile grant in December of this year and you won't get the other one until 2024, you're gonna put the bridge off of late 2024?
I think so. The whole idea of this is PennDOT, they examined it and charged us quite a bit to examine the bridge. Now they're doing it quarterly, I believe. And, so every time they look at it, of course, they're gonna say, oh, no, it's getting worse and worse, and you've got to. And the way they work with you is they say, and here's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna decrease the limit, the weight limit, so that now it's a bicycle, almost, so they put you in a position where you have to serve this community, this area. So that's a good point. Probably when we get it, we'll have to take a look and revisit this, because, there's, almost 30 homes in there. And we're working with it. Are we still even thinking about maybe, buying a right of way to get in there? So there's some other options on that.
Right.
And we have two other bridges.
Yeah.
Post office bridge is really, it's almost a one lane.
Right, well, Ron and the attorney for, the woman that would like to take the bridge, I'm expecting at some point before the end of the year or early next year that it will be, off of our liability.
Oh, boy, that'd be, and more power to that woman. God love her. She's gonna take this bridge. But the beauty of that is then she'll control her own fate. It's the only house on this post office road.
Right.
And it would cost us, again, the same amount to repair that bridge as the Green Mountain Bridge, so. And there's no monies out there. You talk to your state, especially to the county, and the county's getting money for repair of things, but only their own, so there's nothing.
So that being said, do we want to leave this at 500? Do we want to raise it? Do we want to lower it?
Even 500, sooner or later, this is going to go one way or the other, and we'll be putting in a couple zeros there.
Just thought, maybe we wanna let Lynn know to watch for repairs that come through for bridges, because I'm wondering if road maintenance, probably the road maintenance. So maybe she should, we'll just make a note to make sure it's allocated in the right spot if there is a bridge.
Makes sense.
Okay, moving on, 439,600, highway construction, we've never used this line item before.
Yeah, that seems duplicative of, the earlier highway construction rebuild project.
Yeah, it is. And the reason I think, and again, I'm going back here, there was at one time an intent to actually build the road. We were going to build the road, construct the road. That never happened. Became a line item, I guess.
Okay, will no one mind if we make that inactive then, to condense our term of account? Boot it, okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. We don't have any leases left, any payments left on
Yeah, that's correct, 471.
any of those.
And 472, both the Ford and the car, are simply there, they're inactive. But as you, basically that was a formatting reason. All of these that can and could be enacted, just the way when you fight with Excel and you bring in multiple years, if you have line items that are different or, for example, the ARPA funds did not exist back in 2017.
Right.
So when you bring everything together in Excel, it throws a bit of a hissy fit, but all of these will be inactive then.
Okay.
Well, if we don't need them, we can delete them, right?
Well, we'll make them inactive, yeah.
Okay.
Possible to never been any activity.
Well, on the final budget we present, I mean, can we not
Yeah, you will not.
remove it,
you will not
for
change any of
simplicity's sake?
And then the last remaining line item here is payroll expenses. According to Liquid Fuels, you are allowed to relegate a portion of the payroll into this fund. We've never done that because the process is extremely complicated, and between cinders and road repair, we've always smashed through our liquid fuel thing.
Right.
Regardless, we can make this inactive if we want, because we're not using it. But I could also just say, if we ever change our mind, it's a click of a button to bring it back.
It's a reminder, you're right, that it can be done, but it eats it up, it eats liquid fuels up, as you know, and especially with the situation with our road crew, they're unionized, it costs a lot of money. And, good news is, and this should be reflected in our general fund, that we do, we pay, quite a bit towards these expenses out of the general fund. And I see that, that liquid fuels is, in 4 years, has it decreased by $25,000. It's just things are going up and the state's taking them down. Excuse me, state.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that hits the end. I don't know where our changes put us for the final, because I'm working on paper.
Yeah.
We'll have all of this updated and ready for you for next meeting.
Makes sense.
Beautiful.
So do you think that this is a good place to stop? Would you like to continue on to the general fund? Maybe try and get through the revenue section? It's, currently 10:47.
Yeah, what's everyone's availability? Okay. All right, yeah.
We could go through the revenue.
Yeah,
We'll set that together.
Right. Sounds good to me.
And again, thank you very much, Julia. These are, very convenient.
And they're quite a bit larger than last year, too.
Yeah, I know.
I took the hint.
Well, they call me Magoo, Mr. Magoo, so I appreciate it.
Okay, moving on, 2022 budget, 301.100, taxes, current year, 415,000. Wow, yeah.
Sounds about right. Our collections are still good, and we're
I took a look at the, third quarter, and we're really over. We're doing very well, and, I'm just thinking that for the current year, you have it at 415?
That's correct.
I think that's a good common sense number, personally.
yeah.
And as I looked at, again, when you look at it, the taxes, the transfer taxes, everything else, it's above what we had projected for 2021. A little bit. Well, amen, housing sales and,
Our census grew, we were the fastest growing, municipality in the county.
8%.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
I think 415 makes sense.
Okay,
I think it's on the conservative side, so I like that.
okay, moving on through 1-200 prior year taxes. Actually, Corcoran's office, I hope, is that okay if I refer to the three of you as that?
Yeah.
Lynn and I actually had a question. We know that last year we had 2 different delinquent line items, and we got rid of one, so we've only got one now. But we both wanted to confirm that the prior year line item is for taxes that you received from 2021 that were paid on time, but not within enough of a time frame that our tax collector could get them to us in 2021.
Yes, that is right.
And then the delinquent taxes are any taxes that somebody failed to pay entirely, sent it to the tax claim bureau, and they had to pay them to get it back.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think that's why that's higher this year, because people are selling their house off and paying that tax.
Yeah, that's true. We are getting a ton of that because of people filling the obligations of their liens and whatnot.
Yeah, and I did actually have one more question for you, if I may be such a bother. Clean and Green Act property, I know that when you take it out, you need to pay back 7 years of back taxes on that. In a case like that, would we have to consider that as delinquent taxes? Would that be prior year, or would it be current because coming out of that current year and it's new tax?
I think it's current, because it's not like it was delinquent or anything like that, and because of an event that occurred in the current year.
Julia, is there an instance of something like that going on?
There isn't at this time, but it was a question that Lynn and I both wanted answered, just because with all of the property resales, for example, the Schwartz property is up for resale right now, and that's under 319. So we wanted to know how to deal with this if it came into the township. We wanted to just be prepared, that's all.
Okay, and because basically you sell it and it's their obligation to settle that,
That's correct.
nothing to do with us.
Nothing to do with us except where do we put the funds correctly in QuickBooks. That was all. Yep.
All right.
Our 83 line items.
Sounds fine with me. I anticipate there's probably still gonna be a couple people that pay late, COVID or otherwise, but.
Great. Moving on to interim, my apologies, it looks like I missed a 0 on that 100.
Oh, okay.
So I do believe that should be at 1,000 for starters.
That makes sense. If anything, it goes right out with people's assessment appeals anyway.
Yeah.
Next is real estate transfer taxes. As we can see, this is a bit of a conservative estimate, I believe, at 241.
Yeah.
In 2020, we had 330,000. In 2021, we've got 377. But typically, between 2017 and 2019, we're running about that 241, so I didn't know what the board's thought on that was.
Again, just because of what we're going through here, I think that could be a little higher.
Yeah, since your average is 287, you might want to go up close to that.
Well, the market's certainly not dying down at this point.
No.
There's also not a lot to sell.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's a reasonable figure.
You want to maybe consider bringing it up to 275 then?
I think it should be increased a little, somewhat. That's, as Holly had said, you're looking at the average and,
Frank, from your experience in, say, Pocono Township, which, also is growing and whatnot, is there a demand that's still continuing in the housing market there? And even and it's the commercial side too, which there's significant activity happening everywhere.
Yeah, I think you're a little low there.
All right. All at 275?
Everybody? Okay, 275 it is. Moving on, 310, 210, EIP. Actually not been as bad as we were worried about being.
that's me.
Yeah, so again, this is very conservative.
We're so good, we don't even get any, money to, repair ourselves because of the, federal assessment.
On the ARP.
Yeah, I think, that's crazy, but, I don't know, maybe 800,000 is reasonable on the
Yeah.
earned income tax. I think with construction that's going on, particularly when it comes to like the road work and prevailing wages and all this stuff, and also just the fact that we're doing really well in general, I think that maybe 800,000.
Yeah, 800 at least, because your wage base is gonna increase with the number of residents moving in, wages are going higher,
Right.
so easily. I forgot to grab water for myself, my apologies.
I could have delivered that.
No worries.
Good workout, though.
Okay, so do we wanna state 800 or shift that up?
Yeah,
to 800?
I think 800 makes sense. I mean, if we come out to the 886 or something, like, that'll be crazy, but, yeah, I suppose it's possible. I think like 800 probably.
I think even that might be low, because
Yeah.
19 was 836, 20 is 815, now we're 886. If you look at those 3 years, we're definitely low.
Maybe
For what it's worth, we'll probably see, people going to work with the, Smithfield Gateway.
Absolutely.
And, some of that will be reflected in taxes that we'll be able to recover.
Okay, 825 then?
820.
Okay, one choice sold, 820.
All right.
Easier to add.
Well, let's see, we wouldn't expect like a tremendous change with that, so maybe if that's at 152 and the average is like 156, seems like for the most part, it consistently hits like 160, so maybe do we want to call that 160 rather than 152?
Got a nod from Holly. Got this from Frank, okay.
Yeah, we can do that.
And that's it. 160.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. If anything, it'll be a little, a couple thousand higher, but, if we're worrying about that much, then we're actually in decent shape.
Fair enough, okay. Moving on, 319-010, this is the duplicative from 301.400, and this is the one that we made inactive. But wanted you to be able to see these numbers regardless.
Good.
So then moving on, zoning building permits, 320.000.
And, we average around 30,000.
Yeah,
I think you're on that 30.
Yeah, we're on track to do, do we know if, like, for example, because this is the only thing that I know would drive the number up before the end of the year, do we know if Smithfield Gateway has made their payments for their first building permit yet? Because, like, that is a 20,000 square foot footprint, and if what are we at, 25 cents per square foot? And,
stand by.
no, I think it is a fiscal, for the check, but yeah, probably the 15. The base permit fee is like $60, and we might want to consider at some point having our fees reflect better, instead of subsidizing the cost of development, having it reflect, because like, not that we should make it to solely reflect the zoning, the salary, but the zoning expenses in general are kind of hemorrhaging, I think the salary is like 52.5 now, we're already hemorrhaging, 20,
That is,
22.5.
that is actually something I spoke with Ken about approximately 2 weeks ago. Our plan is to have him put together a draft of, what he feels would be reasonable and fair for permit fees. That'll get presented to you sometime in December, with the understanding that when we update our fee schedules for January of 2022 at our regular business meeting, those changes will be included in that resolution.
So that's a note to file, that simply is to consider stamping those fees.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see that 30,000 be more like 40,000. I think, not trying to gouge people, but it doesn't affect, as much someone who wants to do their deck, but someone who's gonna wanna build, 20,000 square foot building, or, remodel a 20,000 square foot building, because right now, the big trend is, let's take something that's terrible, make it look awesome, and it's like, these old manufacturing facilities, and there's plenty of examples of some blighted properties in the township that might get some revitalization effort, and I think if our fees are more reasonable, I think 40,000 is a better number.
Now I would leave it where it's at, and then we go to.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a reasonable target nonetheless. I mean, I'm fine keeping it at 30 for now, but I think that if we have these numbers from Ken, by the next meeting, we, calculate a sample year, then it should go up. 30,000 is just far too low for the amount that goes into everything.
We did have this discussion when the board was discussing raising our sewer fees, our sewage permit fees for Scott, that it is not on the onus of the people who live here to subsidize other people's building structures. So I will talk to Ken and see what I can do to, get those rough draft numbers by the next meeting. So if we're, good to leave that for 30, are we okay to move on?
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good.
320-001, licenses and permits time.
Let's leave that.
That seems pretty, yeah.
Sleep over that.
Yeah.
Okay, septic.
The 13,000, that reflects, the average number of permits now with the escrow, right?
Yes, this is back, when we got Scott, this is what we were looking at, roughly spending on a per year basis for him. This number, because we're doing the escrow now, will be a revenue, and there will be a match on the expense side. That will be close, because some of the work that he does is non-reimbursable for us, but it will be close. Are we good with that number?
I'm not following you totally on that, with the escrow, and then you said there's an offsetting expense.
So if we take in this $13,000, we still need to pay Scott, go down somewhere in the expense area. I think I put 8,000 in the expense line item. I'll tell you what number it is, but just as a bit of an offset, because the way that we're doing our septic permitting now is that rather than giving the township any set fee, they provide a $1,250 escrow for us. Scott, our SEO, draws down on those funds, and then anything remaining goes back to. So it's really a zero wash for clients to SEO, and the only reason that our expenses are going to be slightly higher than any of the money we bring in is there is work that Scott does that isn't covered under an escrow. For example, if somebody calls in a violation and he goes out to investigate that, that would be on our time. Kind of a reimbursable versus non-reimbursable for the SEO.
Okay.
So
So basically, and it's with the sewer authority?
This is not with the sewer authority, it is the township,
It is,
sewage enforcement officer.
okay. Those fees have gone up, is that up?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hearing no comments, are we okay to move on?
that makes sense.
Okay, yard sales. I put in $40.
That
Oh,
makes
come
sense.
on.
And, the average is a little bit higher than that. We've seen
Nobody wanted to, well, I mean, I guess this year some people did, but the so-called peak of people cleaning out their stuff mostly was people throwing it out at township cleanup. I don't think they sold much of it
I mean, feasibly, the average is admittedly 140. I had no idea where pandemic and whatnot would happen, but we can raise this, we can double it if we want to.
Yeah, we could. Let's double it. That sounds like it's
Okay,
a major.
$80 whole dollars for
That's a major increase.
Isn't it? We doubled.
It's a big executive.
Yeah, no, funny. I went to the free yard sale day in East Stroudsburg Borough, this summer. It was nothing.
Oh, man. Okay, moving on. License and permit temporary signs. 17, 18, and 19, we had $300 for those. We haven't seen any activity for 2020 or anything in 2021 yet, which is why it is at 100. Oh.
Just like to point out, not for this discussion, that, given what we get off this two categories, I would be in favor of dropping the, requirement for a fee, because we get nothing and it's goodwill to let people just have it. They can fill out the permit. I don't see why we're charging for it.
It could become
It's what?
it could become so unmanageable. At least in this, it's a token fee, as you said. But the good news is, it's going to happen. That, and it's the implication is there's regulation because you've come to us. You could, it's just a minor thing, and I think it's worthwhile for the yard sale, and I don't know about temporary signs. I don't know about that, but.
I will, I'll talk to Ken about it and come back with more information for the board if that works.
Sure.
Yeah, that sounds fine. I can't imagine that there's a ton of the so-called temporary signs anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, moving on to well permits. We've relatively consistently stayed at $500, so we're at 500, and if that's okay with the board, we'll just shift on.
I'm surprised that it hasn't gone up with the new housing market. You have to get a permit.
For new ones, I believe so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, all on site, they need a permit.
Yeah.
Good point, though.
I will, find out. It's possible,
Okay.
I'm a little unfamiliar with how zoning for new SFDs work. It's possible that this is wrapped into the zoning permit fee or something among that. I don't know how it's working, so we might have seen an increase, it just might not be classified in the will permit. But I'll talk to Ken and find out. Okay, moving on, special events.
What was the special event in 2021?
That is a great question for Sharon.
I don't
Right.
I feel like we refunded that.
We did refund.
Yeah, we refunded like $1,200.
Yeah.
He wanted to do, a weekly 52,
The farmer's market,
the
right?
farmer's market, and it cost $50 a pop every time, so. But as Jacob said, we refunded that, not all of it, because he did, I think, the first 3 or 4, maybe a month of it.
Right.
But yeah, that's what that was about. And we actually, Robert, we forgive, a lot of this, especially if it's an association that,
Yeah,
is a nonprofit. Yeah. So what do you have it down for?
I put it down for 400 to reflect everything except 2021, but Sharon, if we refunded $1,200, it still leaves over 2,000 that isn't accounted for. What was that?
Well, it was, Frank Riccabona he paid $4,050.
Oh, well, there we go, okay.
Right.
So then that means, in effect, 2021 was actually only $50 worth of income.
That's what
No.
he paid, that's the income, $4,050, yeah, that's what he paid. So I don't know where the refund came out.
We did refund, a good part of that.
yes, I don't know where that refund check went.
Okay, but, so it's not in that line item?
It's not in that line.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll need to find that then.
We should, yeah.
Was it exactly 1,200, you know?
I would need to look back at the notes, I've got no memory.
That might have just been the balance, it might have been, like, I don't know. I think he only did it for like 3 weekends.
So that's $150, $200 at the most.
Yeah.
It was 4,100.
So maybe it just came out of like
It was like
miscellaneous, general
3,900.
government, miscellaneous expenses or something.
We'll talk to Lynn after the meeting and, pump that down, get it reclassified to where it needs to go.
Okay.
So then feasibly, if he did 4 weekends, let's say, then we're looking about $300. So does that $400 work?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, for the very few things that are not, you know, the VFW or for the fire companies or something, you know, $400. That's like 8 special events or something.
Okay, the check went, is that okay?
This one is heavy. So it's actually netted against
Sorry, you said 389?
the description. That's why that's at a debit,
Okay.
a credit. So that actually should have been moved up to that, 3850. So we'll have to talk to Lynn about reclassifying that payment net from, this is a refund. I know with government, we have to show gross revenues, gross expenses, but since this is a refund, I would offset the income.
Yeah, otherwise it blows it out before.
Yeah, overstated. So I think the $400 is good in comparison to what the others are, and we'll just get that corrected in.
Wonderful, okay, cool. Are we good to move on then?
Yeah.
Great. Encroachment.
Oh, it's not encroachment, it says here, it's
Street.
Saint encroach me, I think. He was a brother of St. Francis, wasn't he?
In order to make sure that everything got on, 2 pages and not 4.
Yeah.
No, this is for driveway permits and whatnot, when you're encroaching on a street.
Yeah, I mean, $200 seems pretty reasonable. I don't know that it's gonna be, you know, much more than that. I could see the case for maybe like 300 with people building, but even now, we're getting mostly, developments on private roads and stuff like that. The very few that we have seen in the last few years.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And a lot of this it's going on right now. Somebody's doing their driveway onto one of our streets.
Right.
They don't even tell us, you know.
Unfortunately, that can very often be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're okay to keep that at 200, let's shift down to 321,800, cable TV revenues.
Yeah, I see you've decreased that. I know.
Indeed, I have. In general, it goes down a little bit every year. Between 2019 and 2020, it did end up going up. But every other year, it decreased by about $2,000. So just looking at, 2021, I gave it 3, of course, but.
It makes sense that more people stream.
Yeah, a lot of people are cutting.
It's inevitable we'll lose this, yeah.
Yeah, 115, I suppose.
That's an important figure for us, because actually we use that
Right.
totally for our, volunteer, fire and ambulance.
Right.
And it's waning, you're right.
So it's difficult to see at a certain time of the year because there's nothing in
Usually about
Yeah,
September, right?
Sharon, would you mind checking? I thought we received this in.
Yeah, I thought we did.
It could have been, I just might be remembering the last time we voted on renewing
The contract for,
Comes in February.
All right.
so we got it.
Yeah, for 2021, we got it, and it was.
How much was it?
That, $118,000
I'm sorry?
$118,071. In the January to October 2021, column,
Yeah.
that 118 is exactly correct what we're getting for this year.
We didn't drive a hard bargain on that. So it's, 115, right?
Yeah, if you do it. Yeah. Local district justice, fine.
Yeah, moving on.
500 there, I think maybe we could increase it to like 700, just because there are years of backlog in the district court, so it probably will move up.
Well, there's something else going on, and I talked to Ken about this, a couple items that, just follow up and citing some people for violations. They don't do it, but it's a waste of paper because it's a year and a half since he's done anything on any of my sites. And so if that's the backlog, I think he's prioritizing. All the judges, I feel, are doing the same thing, so. It's never been a moneymaker for us, for sure, until we get to the rent.
Okay, should we shift that to 700 then, or keep it at 5?
700 is pretty close to the average there.
Okay.
Moving on, state police fund.
I do not think that will annualize to the 545. We're only at 195 right now.
I believe we get these in, Sharon, if you could double check this for me, I think we get this in two pieces, one July-ish and one like October through December-ish late in the year. I could be wrong there. Just one in July so far. October, November, but it was a larger amount between. I think that looks reasonable, 450.
Cool.
Okay. Moving on. Interest income. We don't really know where any of this is going, but I do have 10,000 in for the checking.
Yeah. That seems reasonable. I mean, it's a far cry from what it used to be, but it might take a while to return to those interest rates.
We're looking to actualize for the end of this year at 10,000. I'm hoping interest rates go up next year, so we might even be able to raise this a little bit. But I worry.
The other thing too is, maybe looking at what's in the checking account, and, I know it's during balance, it can be moved over to Pliget or something like that, I get you.
We have looked into it, and just as we talked to Pliget, it just, the bottom fell out.
Can you do a money market or anything like that? I mean, they're not giving.
At this time, probably, I don't know, we have two accounts, Jim, and substantial monies in them, and the one came through and gave us a decent rate, a decent meaning, 2 point something at the most. So, I don't know, not yet anyway, it doesn't seem, unless you, have some idea, give me a tip.
Well, the other thing too is like federal bonds and things like that, you know, because if you have a substantial balance, you can ladder them so that you're getting at least a decent return, and then you always have something recurring, so that it's not tied up too long.
Yeah, I think the ladders, money market, I think all that makes sense. I also think, though, that we can look at that after we decide whether or not we're gonna make a deposit in some sort of account that, preserves some of our money for, the event that something happens. We don't have a capital, fund in any sense, there's no meaningful one. No, like rainy day fund.
Well, then that, I mean, if the board wanted to do that, that might be the place to do it then. Pull any, large amount of extra funds over into the capital reserve and then use that, do a federal bond and ladder that, so we're not fighting with our checking account. Well, we wouldn't be doing
That, Frank, is that,
I think it'll go up next year.
yeah, most everything else is going up.
maybe bringing
Slightly low, I think.
12, 13, you're thinking?
12.
12,000?
12,000 sounds fine. You know, if it happens, it happens. If not, you know.
Right, depends on what you do with your funds.
This interest income on the other, is that from like People's or is that something else?
Sharon, could you answer that for us?
Just super miscellaneous?
We're in 341,000, interest income other. We're wondering where those funds come from.
Nothing to do with the bond or any,
The bond money, stays in bond account.
except there's an interest.
Yeah, so it looks like she's just hitting the regular, in the fixed and not the sub account, right? So probably one of the. Still part of the interest income, it's just she's not choosing whether it's checking, saving, the interest, so it then defaults to other, you don't choose the sub account.
Okay. In any case, the 500 number seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
It's all over the place.
Okay, moving on, rental income, first level space. This number is admittedly a guess,
Oh, I have the right number. I found the lease.
Perfect, I couldn't
I was
find the
looking
lease
through my
yesterday.
emails, because that was when I saw that, so it's actually gonna be $40,125.
Wonderful, thank you. That is under contract, so that won't change.
It's, it will change, but not for this year, 2022. I think it's every 2 years.
Yeah, it ladders up.
The negotiation went well, and, we're satisfied with our client, and I think they're satisfied being here. That's our judge. And, I think they're paying their fair share.
Yeah, years 2 through 4, this is the second year now, years 2 through 4 will be that number, and then it goes up to $42,150, the 5 through 6, and then 7 through 9, it's $44,275, and so on, to ultimately just under $40,500 in year 10.
Thank you for having that number, you've saved me some research. 354.016 CARES Act, this is inactive. Just the money that we received from the CARES Act, and then, we spent it and then got reimbursed, so this will not affect us at all in 2022. So this account will be made inactive. And moving on to 352, 530, it looks like I didn't put anything in the budget for this, my apologies. I will pull that number, it's going to be approximately $395,000. Actually, it is the exact same number for January to October. My apologies that screen is blank.
So the budget for 22 should be?
$544.95, yes. We get the second installment of the ARPA funds in somewhere between June and July of 2022.
Of 2020, you're right, to bring us up to the total of 700 and something.
Yeah, 790 something.
That
Is that part of the? That's the that's the American
ARP
Rescue
program.
Plan Act. So we've got a couple different ways we can use it for, coronavirus response. Not roads and bridges, but, stormwater management. There's like 4 main pillars. At this time, the Treasury has not issued their final rule. We're still currently operating on interim final, and we assume that we will get the final rule, by their own quote, late fall. So naturally, we're expecting it about December 20th, the day before, we
The day before
went
winter.
into official winter. But those funds are,
Winter solstice.
relegated. There are only certain things we'll be able to spend them on.
So, since you already got 2021, do you have to extend it in 2021?
We do not.
No.
We have until December 31st of 2024 to put the money under contract. Any money under contract then we have to spend by December 31st of 2026. That sound right, Frank?
I'm not sure, I haven't really looked into this too much.
Fair enough, but we have to spend it by 2026 as long as it's under contract, by the end of 2024.
And that can change, as Julia
Oh,
said.
yeah.
Okay, so, have we extended any of that, and that's been identified, or how is that working?
We've
According to
spent,
the temporary regulations.
according to the temporary regulations, we received an invoice for about $4,500. The township has taken on Zelenkovsky Axelrod to help administer this project for us. The contract that we're under, I believe, is for $17,000 and change, and they've asked for their first quarterly payment. While we're still under the interim, the Treasury has said point blank they will pay for anybody who hires anybody like Zelenkovsky Axelrod to come in and administer it. So that will be our only expense, and besides that, I don't want to speak for the board in any fashion, but I think we all have ideas how we want to use it. We don't want to really start discussing anything and making moves until we have that final rule.
Because if something changes, we don't want to be caught like, oh, cool, you guys did this, but, that you can't
You owe
anymore.
$30,000.
Yeah.
Is this being put into a separate fund, separate account or anything like that?
It is.
To keep it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is in a separate people's account with, the interest that it gains between coming in, because it came into the general fund, because the way we got this was through the DCDG single application. So it sat in our general fund for a little bit, generated some interest, and they were kind enough to calculate what interest was earned on those funds, because the interest is relegated under the same, spending that the whole of the money is, and then we transferred all of that out into a separate account at people, just to keep all of our numbers very well separated and safe.
Absolutely, and then Axelrod will be tracking those disbursements for you?
They'll be helping us there. Part of the, what they do is check to see if we've lost any revenue over the year. We just got back calculations back 2 weeks ago, and we haven't. But they'll also be the consultant for how we spend the funds. They'll help us with the yearly audit that we have to do according to the federal government, and basically everything associated with it.
And let's just say that, this firm, was, granted a contract by, I guess, all the municipalities in Monroe County, including the county.
Right,
So-
no, I was just trying to think, like, who's gonna be tracking it, and then we know what we're
Right.
doing quarterly work, who to ask for that paperwork, I'm sure.
It's basically a giant grant. So I'll be working with Zelenkovsky Axelrod, and they'll be doing the high-end stuff. But as we start spending money and, getting into the budget stuff, Sharon will come like she does for the other grants.
I think what will happen is we'll ask for a presentation, once this is finalized, to have this group come in and we'll have a public meeting. And when I say we, it'll probably be with the total group.
Moving
Money.
on, green light, go. I left this blank, and part of the reason that I left this blank is that we're not really sure where this is going. And I'm too unfamiliar with how the contracts are separated out, what this might even be costing us.
Well, I heard you're going to be very familiar. Did you get that from a meeting?
Yeah, I got that memo.
Okay, what's going on right now is, we're in the process of, and I think it was suggested, I think Robert, you suggested it at a public meeting, that, we would, be responsible for this section, and this section meaning is the lights that are going to be put in place, including Middle Smithfield Township and ourselves. We would take on the administrative responsibilities for doing that. As it is right now, there's nothing. They don't have anything. They're putting together specs to go out for bid. You guys are in the same situation with Pocono. I think you're with Stroud and Pocono. I'm not quite sure. But, so when they put the specs together to go out to bid, that's when we're all going to be, looking for this money. But I got a feeling it might be one of these things, spend it and get reimbursed. I'm not quite sure. I'm hoping that's not the case, but.
Probably correct on that. So then should we leave this at zero with the understanding that, feasibly this project's gonna be more than a year? If we spend everything by the time we get to the reimbursable stage, it'll probably unfortunately be 2023.
Yeah.
I don't think it goes out to bid till next June.
Right.
Okay, yeah, so then let's leave this at zero if that's okay with everybody, and, yes, keeping on. Phase 1 DCED fishing pier grant. I might have read this incorrectly, I in fact did. So the number that is reflected in the budget, is for the second half of phase, I'm not sure, please stand by.
Total grant was for about 90,000, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Liabilities budget.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Just a moment to get to my notes, I apologize.
Already received that one? I don't think we received all of it.
Yeah.
No, I think we have to submit some things to get the rest of it back. I think we've used some.
Yeah, okay, so,
spend it and then
I don't know if we spent any of that, have we?
so.
We have.
The way this works, if you'll actually look down two more line items at 354,600, that 45,000 number that is in the DCED fishing pier grant should actually be shifted down to phase 2. My apologies, I'm putting that in the incorrect spot. Yeah, there's nothing left on phase 1. There still is, but the hope for us is that that project should be completed by the end of this year. They're working also on completing phase 2 by the end of this. Oh geez, I think I've just doubly confused myself.
We already got 45,000.
Yeah, we're that grant, but that, I wonder if this is put in the wrong spot. Lord, my deepest apologies, please stand by.
It happens. Worried.
Yeah, if you want to,
Just put a question mark there.
yeah.
Let's
I will,
move on
I'll
to,
get these answers.
recycling grant funds. That we don't expect to hear about for a little bit. Correct?
The recycling grant fund, that,
Since we applied for that grant, are applying for that grant for the new Tarco, since our other one, but the 219 should go up. Up 2 lines?
no, so that 219, that 219,000 is located in 354,700.
Yeah.
That is for Marshall Falls LSA grant, so that is in the right spot.
like we're missing one grant, and one for the fishing pier.
There was 219, that is the,
One for the fishing pier, one for the trail, one for the vision loss. Those are all three.
Right,
Seems like
so,
we're missing one here.
yeah, the Wellness Park Phase 3, DCED LSA, has not been added to our chart of accounts yet, actually, because we've not even begun to start that process. So that is something that we need. Sharon, do you recall, we added a line item, have we added a line item for Phase 3 of the Wellness Park yet?
I don't think so.
Okay.
There was no activity, Jennifer, we would have added it yet.
Yeah, we just received that Phase 3 grant for the $146,000, maybe 2 months ago. So that, we've not even signed any contracts for engineering or the like for that yet. So that has actually not hit this, so we need to go ahead and add that.
So, is it already recorded then? When you say you received it, has the grant been authorized, you just haven't received funds yet?
Yeah, it's been authorized, we've got a grant contract saying that they will give us this money once we spend it, and then we'll get reimbursed.
You haven't spent anything yet?
We have not spent any money yet.
And that's Phase 3,
That's correct.
right, in order.
$146K was for the vision loss trail, unless that is
That is
Phase 3, okay, all right, I just wanna make sure I'm not.
What needs to go in the budget, is that what you?
Yeah, feasibly that work, or maybe, whatever the board decides, but that, we should add the line items regardless. And I don't know if we should be able to get that project done in a year if the board wants to move on it, so, yeah, let's add those things to the budget.
Yeah. I mean, we have the grant, there's no sense in not,
Yeah. So then, that line item can be called Phase 3.
Yep.
Wellness Park DCED LSA grant.
Yeah.
And then we're looking at a revenue of $146,467.
How much, I'm sorry?
$1,46,467 for Phase 3 Wellness Park DCED LSA grant.
46,000.
67.
400, I can't talk, 146, 467. My apologies.
No problem.
No, thank you.
That'll be added in.
That'll be added in.
And what's this 219?
So the 219 is a Marshall's Falls DCED LSA grant.
We get that. Or
We
is
have
it approved?
received it, it has been approved, we're under contract for that. Like most grants, it's a reimbursement, so we need to spend those funds first, and then we'll get reimbursed for them.
You're gonna add this to the expense.
And it is down, I don't have a line item number off the top of my head, but it's,
as long as it's matched to the expenses.
yes. Okay, so to back up, and my apologies, the 45,000 number that's sitting in the fishing pier, incorrectly placed, that is a Marshall's Falls Phase 1 DCNR grant.
You did not receive it.
We have not received it yet.
But you got the other 45,000.
That's correct, and this is also, so the way that DCNR works is they can give you up to 50% of the funds as startup costs. So they'll hand over half of that allocation, get that, use it, and then talk to them or you can get reimbursed, but you get the money in 2 chunks.
And again, this has to be set up in the expenses section.
I'm sorry, so for 2022, for account 354.600, we are getting 45,645.
Yes, and that needs to be shifted, the 2022 budget that is in phase one needs to be shifted down 2 numbers into phase 2.
Okay.
My apologies for all of that confusion.
No worries. So then, that above number for the phase one, is that zero or is it something else?
Okay. So, for phase one of the fishing pier, we have an $84,000 grant, of which $72,148 is reimbursable. We can put that number in the 2022 budget, but it is my hope that we will complete phase one by the end of this year.
Well, that makes sense then. Let's keep it at zero for now then.
Yeah.
It's time to finish that.
2020.
Well, we have had some expenditures, we bought the lumber, right?
Yeah, and there are, other engineering costs that are associated with the fishing pier that we have accrued. We have signed the contract with Pioneer for them to build the pier as well. So we're just waiting for them to get started.
Okay. And then the 219 on the Marshall Falls, next one, that will
Correct.
stay.
Yeah, now that's the DCED grant of phase one for Marshall's Falls
Right.
that we use for the DCNR.
Just a point here that you put some time into this section and along with the expense part,
Yes,
because otherwise, to get one part, it blows the whole bunch of
yeah.
Right.
work. So you, just, I mean, it's fine for now, but that's the time, you know, matching the expense part. Finding it all out.
Yeah, and making sure it's a net zero for the.
Yeah, and then summarize how, you know, how that all works next time.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
can do.
these are a little tricky for the
Yeah.
time everything.
Right.
We got, 4 different areas going.
Right.
Okay. Next one is the PERDA reimbursement then.
It's pretty,
That's 1,500 is pretty routine.
I think.
The licenses, I don't think there's gonna be any more like debtors forgiveness next year.
Well, there'll be a couple with Smithfield Gateway, I think there'll be 2 or 3. Or did they already start transferring, didn't they?
Yeah, I think we did a few of those in early 2020,
Yeah.
maybe one more in the spring.
Expecting this big lump sum.
Very odd.
Actual basically 21.040.
I think that those numbers are like shifted.
There's a formula shift there.
Yeah, there's like it seems to have only affected a couple. I think a couple are just like a line up from where they see.
I think I mentioned it earlier, where as you're shifting things, if you don't have a line item that existed, that exists now in 2021 that didn't exist in 2017,
Yeah.
it makes combining this, and unfortunately, these errors happen, so Board, my apologies, I will have this
All right.
fixed.
No worries.
Just, yeah, take a look at that. 2,400 seems okay.
Yeah, I think it only affects from here until where you have like the hashtag reference remark. I think if you just shift everything from there, like down one, something like that, it should fit.
I will look into this and I will have this corrected for next week. Again, my apologies.
No problem.
Don't worry about it.
Progress.
On the draft, right?
Right.
Okay, 2,400, okay?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Fund reimbursement. That this is a rough estimate. I will get a exact number from Perry. Now that we've got, if we just rehired, but.
Maybe just put it at like the 36. That seems about where it's going to.
Figures there, Lynn would have the figures that we're actually paid and will pay. So you're right, yeah, Terry just formalizes it with them and then we'll have it.
Okay, I'll get a better number for us then.
Well, I'm curious.
Okay, moving on, 355,070, Ford and Fire. Again, this is an estimate. I haven't gotten an exact number from, Lynn for this yet. That'll be pending, but the 48 is closed.
Yeah, there's, I think she did, you're right. She probably just recently got those figures in. And we gotta be careful there too, because they're also, in decreases in these funds.
Yeah, 'cause it went from,
And I was thinking
almost
maybe
49 to 42, so maybe like 42 is a good number to hold it at. In lieu of taxes, yeah, it never.
that pilot program, are we going to get involved with that any, do you think?
I don't think we really have anybody that's talked about the payment move taxes, since that's usually like even more beyond like a TIF. That's kind of like, someone has a really big development and it's like, take it off the tax rolls, but then you ask them to pay close to what they would have paid in taxes or something.
Right.
We don't seem to have a lot of that, given the history of basically in the neighborhood of $73 to $77. I wonder, that can't be more than like one property.
Sharon, could we ask you to look into that for us? What the transaction was? Yeah, for 359,000.
And Dora Golding?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Not on the tax rolls, but they.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. Since they're nonprofit.
Is the 75 okay then?
That makes sense.
$75.
Yep. Yeah, the 50,000 on the engineering, that makes sense, given the versatile nature of it, and there's just
And the increase in
a lot
fees.
more going on, because it's just, like the increase in fees, but also the projects that they're going to be working on, whether they're reimbursable through grants or just our own, or just an applicant or something.
So 50.
That's good.
Sensible. Yeah.
50 seems reasonable, but I just wanna, an area that we really need to look at to make sure that all of the Boucher ever charged back to those that it is reimbursable. So, that's something that we talked about in the past,
Right.
and maybe weren't.
Actually, you recommended maybe we even consider writing them off.
Well, I
But that-
think we need to go back to those expenses and just trace even if bill has been issued. It should be an account. Or, and statements should be going out and so forth, but it's not there, I'm just concerned that there's some that could be reimbursable that have not been billed out.
Maybe so.
Yeah, I think we have
it's
that
very
information.
consistent.
We've definitely caught up a lot of ground. Lynn and Sharon are working very diligently on making our escrow, function as it's supposed to. We spoke on this probably 4 or 5 months ago at this point, and it is a slightly long-term project, but I'm going back through all of our engineering and solicitor notes, organizing by property and who they were paid to. And I have a master list at this time that I'm still working on. I'm back somewhere in 2016. Obviously, things like budget and that ED zone and whatnot come first. But this is something that we are working on, albeit slowly.
A suggestion might be for 2021 that let's just tackle this year, somewhere between now and the end of the year, and just make sure this was this year was taken care of. And then I know you're gonna be catching up on the prior years. That would just be.
That's fine. The legal fees, they're probably only likely to go up. I mean, the average on those looks like, 11.5 or something like that. I think that
Yeah, this might be,
50, yeah, it might be a little low.
it might be a lot low.
I mean, I would say something probably closer to like 25. This year we had a tremendous amount, but fortunately the legal burden's not necessarily going to be on us for some of the matters that occurred this year.
Okay, would we like to shift this to 25 or 30 then?
I mean, 30 probably makes even more sense, just because, I mean, we do have litigation. We're going to, we're going to Commonwealth Court.
30,000?
31? I think 30 makes sense.
Well, legal fees reimbursable, are we looking at that line item, 002?
From 15,000 to 30.
Again, this is something that is gotta be better identified, because as we're looking at the current actual, everything is going into side for reimbursement. So maybe those bills need to be looked at to see what could have been reimbursed.
We do that
I mean, we've just
review.
had a significant portion that's like ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, probably not to the degree that it's, I don't know, maybe not all of that 49,000 or 58 that we expected to actualize as, but.
I mean, when, Parasec sends the bill, everybody's breaking it down by.
Oh, yeah, they're categorized, yeah.
He itemizes them.
It's all being put into township court. Not being broken down by other projects that could be reimbursed. So that's.
In other words, it's reimbursable, but it's not specific to a project. Is that it?
So you mean our solicitor's budget should be broken into what we're paying and then his expenses that are just reimbursable?
Right, and what we're.
As opposed to just 120 for him overall, you want it in two separate.
Yeah, as a budget item, yes, but what I'm looking at is the actual, and if there's been during the year projects that the attorney worked on that were reimbursable, it's not being identified. So,
Really, Holly, it's a question for you. I've jumped forward to 404-310, where we've got our township, or law township solicitor. On the expense side of things, understanding that we're working in revenue now, does Lynn have any other line items to put it under, except that one?
there is a 404-311, which is the reimbursable legal fees, and that is zero right now.
So it's just not categorized correctly in QuickBooks.
Yeah, so those, whatever the bills were for the earlier part of the year need to be looked at to determine what should have been broken out into that other account.
And that line item would do it then?
Yeah.
Okay.
That, using that 411, or 311, 404-311, to show, because then that helps us track what should be reimbursable, and then you go back up and make sure that's been billed. Like, we're looking at income here that, it's great that it should be reimbursable, but is it getting billed back out? You know, is it being requested?
We have a trail, we have a fail-safe on it, but we still have some outstanding reimbursables that aren't being paid.
Right.
should be in it. They should have been put into.
Okay, the question though, on all of my budget items that I used to pull together this spreadsheet, 404, 311 does not exist. Is it active right now?
It's got showing because there was.
Oh, because of the zero, okay. Okay,
So, yeah, it looks like even for 2021, you were able to get reimbursed for about 50,000, but that corresponding expense hasn't been identified.
right, okay, so board, that will take us a little bit of time to go back to everything, but, we will get on this project and we will fix that.
Do we wanna call today on that note? I mean, it's, you know,
Yeah.
11:56, I think that leaves us with enough to take care of. Our next budget meeting would be scheduled for, next Wednesday, the 27th.
And I think, Julia did a good job on these, with all the craziness of these grants and everything.
We need, it'll be more fine tuned
Yeah,
as we move along,
yeah.
Okay.
but,
So we're leaving off at what item?
We will pick back up next week at 361.300 subdivision and land development fees.
Oh.
In the meantime, I will go back and correct that column, or that row shift. So we might wanna go back and just double check everything from the PERDA, and I will also, have the phase three, or rather Sharon, because we appreciate all of our finance people. We'll have the phase three stuff added and have those numbers into consideration as well.
Great. With that, I'd like to entertain, I mean, we don't have anyone on Zoom or in person for public comment, so we would have to, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the budget session.
Motion.
All right, motion to adjourn by Mr. Levenheim. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Barrett. Questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned, 11:57 a.m.